Hey, Sarah. Well, in 1977, millions of Americans tuned in to see a pivotal television face-off involving two very unlikely adversaries. Flamboyant talk show host David Frost convinced Richard Nixon to sit down for a series of interviews about his controversial presidency and the Watergate scandal. Their unusual confrontation led to a stunning confession by Nixon. Now, the new film Frost-Nixon retells this historic event, and our Tim Estiloz sat down with its stars and director Ron Howard. Here is your backstage pass.
Good evening. I shall resign the presidency at noon tomorrow.
This is an historic day, the only time a president has ever resigned from office.
Nixon knew about the Watergate cover-up.
The man who has committed the greatest felony in American history will never stand trial.
Richard Nixon's disgrace for the Watergate scandal cost him the presidency. But Nixon also escaped answering tough questions about his role in the scheme. That is, until he faced a most unlikely interrogator.
I've had an idea for an interview, Richard Nixon.
You're a talk show host.
I spent yesterday watching you interview the Bee Gees.
Weren't they terrific?
Why would I want to talk to David Frost?
I got $500,000.
Really?
In the film Frost-Nixon, Michael Sheen and Frank Langella play two polar opposite adversaries, recreating the behind-the-scenes workings of an historic TV event.
Frost is just not in your class, sir. You're going to be able to rebuild your reputation.
This entire project is a joke.
I do hope that isn't coming out of your own pocket.
I wish my pockets were that deep. I'm in this for everything I've got.
You know, Michael, no pun intended, but there is sort of a David versus Goliath theme to this film in that David Frost was really facing a really formidable foe in Richard Nixon. How did you enjoy approaching that?
David went into the interviews feeling like it was just a great thing to get the interview at all. He wasn't looking to, bring Nixon down in any way, and then discovers, as time goes on, that actually the responsibility that he has on his shoulders is that he's probably the only man who's ever going to get a chance to get a confession of guilt out of this man. And as that weighs down on him, then it becomes a David and Goliath story, I suppose, and that's when it gets fascinating.
The American people need a conviction. I'd like to give Richard Nixon the trial he never had. Democracy depends on it.
We're not going to let that happen. We're going to make them choke on power and glory.
Why didn't you burn the tapes?
What I like about your performance is it brings a surprisingly sympathetic side to Richard Nixon. Did you find that as well personally in terms of tapping into his character?
His crimes were his crimes, and I believe he committed them. But I became quite compassionate about the life he lived and the price he paid for it, and he paid for it. And he says in the movie, no one can know what it's like to resign the presidency.
We're going to show those bums. We're going to make them choke on our continued success, our continued headlines, our continued awards and power and glory. We are going to make those mothers choke. Am I right?
You are.
How daunting is it for you to play these real-life characters such as David Frost or a Tony Blair when they are there to critique your work, if you will?
Yeah. Well, I've never met Blair, so I'm aware that obviously he's there and that he has some sort of opinion about it. But with David, I mean, he was actually on the set one day watching me doing it, and that was a fairly peculiar experience.
And forget about the trivia, David. Who cares whether Nixon took the White House bed to Europe when he traveled?
I do.
Well, it's irrelevant. It's just a sort of banal anecdote that would distract the talk.
A what? Go on. No, say it. What, you were going to say talk show host?
Yeah. Yeah, I was.
It's always a scary prospect, because you're not just doing an impersonation, you want to take the audience on a journey, and so it's finding that balance so that they're comfortable with the idea that I'm playing someone they're familiar with, but also they'll go on the journey with them.
Director Ron Howard had the daunting task of bringing the intimate intensity of the real-life TV face-off to the big screen.
Well, the intimacy is the word. That's the key, because that's the one thing that a film camera can do is get in there and really let the audience, understand all the nuances of these characters And, you know, movies are driven by different things. In this case, the acting is so wonderful. And if you like watching good performances and, working out a dramatic storyline, you know, I think this is a film that you'll enjoy.
Look, when you're in office, you gotta do a lot of things sometimes that are not always, in the strictest sense of the law, legal. But you do them because they're in the greater interests of the nation.
Right, wait, just so I understand correctly. Are you really saying that in certain situations, the president can decide whether it's in the best interests of the nation and then do something illegal?
I'm saying that when the president does it, that means it's not illegal.
I'm sorry?
The on-screen electricity between Langella and Sheen came easy to them. Both played these roles together before on Broadway.
How different was it for you to come from the stage version of this and bring it to the big screen, which in a way made it a lot more intimate?
We sort of came full circle. But by the time we got to the film, we'd built up myself and Frank had built up so much detail, you know, in what we were doing, and we knew these characters so well. And so then to be able to get back to that intimacy and then have all that richness underneath, which, you know, kind of went missed in the theatre a lot of the time, the subtleties, the nuances, and for the camera to pick it up, it was just a wonderful way to finish the whole process. You came to office promising peace. No sooner did you get into the White House than U.S. involvement in Vietnam deepened. Did you feel that you'd betrayed the people?
I wish I'd gone in sooner. And harder.
Ron, as a director, what did you find most compelling about this battle of wits between David Frost and Richard Nixon?
I thought I knew something about this story. I'd even lived through it, you know? But there were so many elements that surprised me that I was really, really enthralled.
There's a reason they call him Tricky Dick. Stand by to roll tape.
You had a pleasant evening last night?
Yes.
To do any fornicating?
And cue David.
And lots more coming up on Backstage. Don't judge this movie by its title. Slumdog Millionaire may sound strange, but we'll tell you why it's creating a lot of Oscar buzz. But first, make this Thanksgiving even more special with some Turkey Day tips your family